Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From shade to city, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to an off-day edition of Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. And Mets fans, I speak to you today on September 22nd with 6 games to go. The New York Mets officially don't control their own destiny. We'll get into all of the nonsense, all of the bad conversations, and everything we need to talk about this damn team. Welcome to the channel, guys. Welcome to the show. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You know all that fun stuff. The New York Mets have done the impossible yet again. This is not just a 2025 issue. This isn't a 2022 issue. This isn't a 2023 issue. This isn't even, a 2015 issue. This isn't even a 07 issue, 08 issue. This isn't a 1973 issue. This isn't a 69 issue. This isn't years like 99. This isn't years like 2000. Many, many years, the Mets do the impossible, good or bad. A lot of the impossible on the good end are surprises, right? Let's go back to the wonder years of 1969. That was impossible on the good end of the spectrum for the New York Mets. Nobody expected it. They were a bad team since their inception, and they found a way, somehow, some way, with obviously a couple of Hall of Famers, a couple of great players, win a World Series and beat the mighty Baltimore Orioles. They find their way back to the World Series in 1973 by getting through the Big Red Machine, the Cincinnati Reds, go figure. Yet ultimately lose to the Oakland Athletics, who were the powerhouse at that time with the Reds. Then we got to wait a long time until 1986, right? Even the 73 team was kind of like good, but not great. A lot of surprises. They weren't expected to beat the Big Red Machine. And we go on with that. More impossibility on the good spectrum. Then bad year. 1986 rolls around. One of the best team in baseball, going through the playoffs. A lot of things that have happened. We all know what happened in Houston. We all know what happened in the World Series, right? Wasn't much of an impossibility, but we were down to a few outs to go. And it could have ended up the Red Sox killing the curse in 86. But a couple of hits, couple of clutch hits, couple of wild pitches, and Mets win a World Series in 1986. Then, bad year. And then we get to the late 90s. Where it's very similar to this year, where the Mets were basically falling apart in 99. They all they had to do is play quality baseball, 500 baseball, and they would have had no problem making the playoffs in 99 as a wild card team. Unfortunately, they played so bad down that stretch that they had to play a one-game playing game. Remember that? Against, go figure, the Cincinnati Reds. Al Leiter pitched the game of his life. Mets win. Mets are in the playoffs in 99. Right? Kind of not impossible. They were kind of almost did the impossible of choking that playoff spot away, but they ultimately got to the playoffs. So, everything happened. Then we all know 99 happened. We don't have to go over that again. 2000, right? We all believe, and I truly believe this. I think the 99 team was so much better than the 2000 team. Yet the 2000 team got to the World Series. Obviously, they ultimately lost to the Yankees in the Subway Series, World Series. But again, another impossibility where, they had guys like Timo Perez, right, in center field. Their pitching wasn't the best. 99 was the year. We all felt like the 99 team was better than the 2000 team. At least that's the way I feel. Then, bad year. 05 comes, the Jose Reyes years, the David Wright years. 06 was great. But ultimately, we lost to an inferior team. That was probably one of the best teams that a lot of us seen in our lifetime. With the young additions of David Wright and Jose Reyes. Brought in the veterans like Paula Duca, Carlos Delgado, Carlos Beltran. Go on and on and on. Right? That rotation, all right. Obviously, they ultimately lost to an inferior St. Louis Cardinals team. I don't have to, go down memory road to tell you how that ended. That was impossible. That was an impossible situation. 07 with 17 to go. And this is very similar to this year, and I'll tell you why in a second, not division-wise, but in general. We'll get into that in just a second. 07, 7 with 17 to go. We know how that goes. The Marlins, and it's looking like, deja vu all over again this year when it comes to the Marlins once again. With 7 to 17 to play, it's very similar to this year, and it is funny how it's kind of similar, not with division-wise, but just the way it's going about. It just feels that way. Because 06 was a disappointment in the playoffs. 07 was like, all right, it was a bad loss, but you know what? We got a lot of the same team. We're really good, and the collapse happened. 08, little similar, but different, still a choke job. And then we all know what happened after 08. It was kind of downhill from there. Citi Field opens up a couple of years later, and then we go from, the year later, and we go from there. This year, with the choke job in effect, because that's what it is right now, probably one of the biggest choke jobs the Mets have probably ever been through in their history. And this can go through generations of fans, right? We all had heartbreak. We all had terrible seasons and big heartbreaks in the playoffs and end of seasons and everything like that. But when it comes to what is happening this year, in my lifetime, now again, I've seen 2 World Series in my lifetime that the Mets made. I've seen 2000 and 2015. 2015, again, 2000 ended up being the what if Timo Perez scores on that Todd Zeile hit to left field if that ball, when the ball bounces off the top of the wall. With 2 outs, you got to run. Easily should have scored, gets caught at home plate, and that kind of dictated the series, in my opinion. Right? That's what I remember. That was my World Series. My first Mets World Series had to involve the New York Yankees during their dynasty. That's just the way the Mets fan has to deal with nonsense like that. 06 was probably the most exciting year I was young, and it was exciting. It was fun, but ultimately they choked. 07 they choked. 08 they choked. 2015, nobody expected them to be a good team, maybe a 500 team, but nothing what actually happened by making the World Series. We know the big trade deadline acquisition of Yoenis Cespedes, among others, that helped this team push them over the finish line, take over the division of the Nationals, and go on their run in the playoffs and ultimately lose in the World Series to the Kansas City Royals. This year, all right, we know about 2022 and how they choked the division away, embarrassed themselves in a wild card series. 2023, basically with mostly the same team, failed, and the trade deadline, we became sellers. 2024 was supposed to be a transition year and another possibility with this team on the good end. They were a surprise team where nobody expected them to be any good. See the trend here? Expectations are high, they fail. When expectations are low, they seem to shock a lot of people, including fans. So the choke job is very much in session right now, Met fans, and in full effect for the New York Mets. The issue lies between 2 seasons in 1 year. And it's obvious what everybody probably thinks it is. As of right now, since the first time since April 5th, the New York Mets are out of the playoffs and don't control their own destiny. They need help from the Cincinnati Reds to lose a few games here. And who knows how many? Again, it would be nice. The Mets go 6-0. The Reds go 5-1, and the Mets make the playoffs, right? That's the perfect scenario. We all know it's not going to be that perfect. It's going to be I truly think it's going to come down to the last game of the year, because why not? I mean, that's just what the Mets have to deal with. And it just screws them going into the playoffs, because they got to use every good pitcher they have. It's not many, but they got to use their best guys available, and can't even try to set up their rotation for a wild card series if they happen to get in. Very similar to last year. So, unfortunately, the New York Mets are now out of the playoffs because of a tiebreaker that they ultimately don't have against the Cincinnati Reds. They don't have it anymore against the Arizona Diamondbacks, because the Mets decided to lose against division teams in the Washington Nationals, losing 2 out of 3. So they don't even have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks anymore either, which is another issue. So now we have to worry about the team in front, the team with the Reds, and watch them. And if the Mets don't take care of their own business, they can be in a 3-way tie at the end of the season, and they have no hope of making the playoffs. Unlike last year, where they had more tiebreakers, as long as they win one of the 2 games against the Braves, they had the tiebreaker. So there was no concern there. We don't have the tiebreaker against the Reds. We don't have the tiebreaker against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the Mets are royally screwed if they don't get a little bit of help and they don't take care of their own business. Priority number 1 is taking care of their own business. And that's what they've lacked. They absolutely lack taking care of their own business. You know, I was there with Chris and many others in Pittsburgh when the Mets got swept by Pittsburgh. Like little games like that, where you could have won 1 game or 2 games, could have changed an outcome. Could have been a little bit different down the stretch here. A couple of games in August, a couple of games in June, where they went through a tough month. It's all coming together as a real problem for the New York Mets, and they're on the verge of choking. And, you know, the tale of 2 seasons in 2025 is basically this. Through June 12th, they were the best team in baseball at 45-24. 19 games over 500. That was where they were the best. Since from June 13th, they're 35-52. 35-52 is not a good team. You're nearly 20 games under 500 from June 13th. And I don't want to hear the excuses when it comes, and I apologize with the comments, guys. I'm going to catch up with those. I promise you that. The excuses will be injuries to the rotation. We didn't have Sean Manaea back, but let nobody tell anybody that we didn't have Sean Manaea. We didn't have Frankie Montas. We didn't have those 2 guys for the 45-24 stretch. It started to go downhill prior to them coming back. Obviously, Kodai Senga did get hurt. All right, if you want to put that on on the excuse column, go right ahead. I won't. I don't think Kodai Senga would have been good regardless, even if he didn't get hurt. I think he's a guy who faced a lot of teams once or twice. And then when these guys see them for the third, fourth, fifth time in a season, that's when he always does bad. And that has been his career, along with injuries. So it does not make no sense to me that people are going to make excuses for this team. And you know what? We're going to hear it from David Stearns that the Mets don't make the playoffs. This is an utter failure throughout the organization, from the players to the managers to the coaches to the GM. It's a team effort of failure. This cannot be an excuse-ridden offseason if the Mets don't make the playoffs. I don't want to hear about Shomania. Shomania is making $25 million. You've been back since before the All-Star break. You can't figure it out. Either you're hurt and you're pitching hurt, which ultimately is hurting your team, or you're not hurt and you're not that good. But yet, it's okay. We only got him for 2 more years at $25 million. So congratulations to David Stearns on that. $17 million for Frankie Montas. Oh, by the way, we have him next year too, but, he has Tommy John now. So he gets $34 million for barely pitching for the New York Mets. Great job, David Stearns. Clay Holmes, the guy who is a 5-inning pitcher. Most likely he's going to be a 4-inning pitcher. This is a guy that should not be in a rotation next year. You need to go out and get a better pitcher along with these young kids. That's a fact. I don't care if you got to trade for one. I don't care if you got to figure out how to get a guy in free agency or in a trade. You need a guy at the top of this rotation along with Nolan McLean. Don't count on Brandon Sproat to be the secondary guy. Don't count on Tong to be a third guy. Don't count on David Peterson, who is falling apart at the seams here in the second half of the season. Clay Holmes needs to be in the bullpen. You got him under contract. Use him in the bullpen where he's been most successful in his career. As you like to give a ton of one-year deals to these guys, you got to figure out the Edwin Diaz situation. You're going to have Pete Alonso a free agent. It's got to be decided what they're going to do here, because there can be a lot of changes or there can be very little changes. And if you go into next year with very little changes, why do you expect anything different? The same core, the same problems, the same conversations every year. Go back to streams every year after the season, no matter if it's in the playoffs or out of the playoffs. Basically, post-season streams, season recaps streams. It's the same conversation about these core guys. We keep on losing, and people continue. It started with Brandon Nimmo a couple of years ago. Don't tell me Met fans care that Brandon Nimmo is 50% of what he was. He was never a good center fielder. He has no arm, and he's a guy who gets hot for 2 months out of the season and doesn't do anything else the rest of the year. Yet, Met fans could not wait to say sign Brandon Nimmo. Signing Brandon Nimmo is probably the reason why a guy like Drew Gilbert got traded. Jet Williams, Carson Bench are the reason why they're still in the minor leagues, because of Brandon Nimmo and his contract. Like, it's a trickle-down effect. This is the problem. Trading for Jose Siri. Signing Harrison Bader. These are all the little things that kind of put this team in the pickle that they're in. And again, do you ultimately blame the players for not getting the job done? Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. But it's the same names we talk about every season, every year. At some point, you got to change the big core of the team. You can lose with Alonso. You barely win with Alonso, but you can definitely lose with Alonso. You're losing with Alonso now. You're losing with Nimmo now. You're losing with Jeff McNeil now. This might not sound very positive for the Met fans, because I'll get a lot of backlash, but you already know I don't care. The New York Mets need to make major changes in this core. And it's going to be very hard to get rid of that Nemo contract unless you eat 95% of it. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. You do got Ryan Clifford. You do got Carson Benj. You do got Jet Williams. All can play the outfield. Probably much better defensively than Brandon Nemo. And we talk about the offense all you want. But people always talk about how do you replace production, right? That's what everybody always talks about. That's the argument everybody gives. They give it with Pete Alonso. They give it with other guys. Production always looks nice on the surface. When you look at the final stat line, you're like, wow, how are we going to replace that? This is how you replace one player with two players. That's how you do it. If you have a guy that hits 15 home runs and a guy who hits 20 home runs, yes, that's 35 home runs. It's not 45 home runs. But guess what? If both of those guys have 80 RBIs apiece, that's 160 RBIs. How many Pete Alonso are going to have? 140? So you got two guys that stretch out your lineup that's going to give you 160 RBIs combined. And these are not great seasons. These are average to above average seasons that you would get from guys who are hitting 15 to 20 home runs, giving you 75 to 85 RBIs. That is more RBIs. You stretch out your lineup. You get more production from two players instead of just one, right? Everybody's talking about, the Mets didn't go out and get other guys because of Juan Soto. Well, they also didn't get other guys because you paid $30 million to Pete Alonso. You paid $22 million for Brandon Nimmo. So, yeah, of course. And, all the lovers of David Stearns is going to get a rude awakening when he's not going to pay Edwin Diaz. I find that very hard to believe. You know who's going to be out closing next year? Ryan Helsley, because he's going to be cheap as hell. So congratulations, Met fans. You just fell into another trap of David Stearns. Congratulations, because that's what's going to happen. Pete Alonso, if you think Pete Alonso is going to be a New York Met, unless Steve Cohen completely takes over the operation over David Stearns, good luck thinking you're going to have Edwin Diaz here closing games for you for the next couple of seasons. Good luck having Pete Alonso man in first base for the foreseeable future. Not happening. It's not happening. Sorry. It's just not. They're not going to give Edwin Diaz more money for probably more years when he's getting older. They're just not doing it. They're just not doing it. David Stearns don't give long-term deals to bullpen arms. You think he's going to do that for Edwin Diaz? I find that hard to believe. Find that very hard to believe. Sorry. It is what it is. And Brad, be careful with that. He traded for Helsley. You got to remember, Edwin Diaz was here prior to David Stearns. The contract was already given. David Stearns wants to put a mark on this team, win or lose. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is what people don't understand. David Stearns is going to have a big hand in this cookie jar of this team. And I said it for a while. I'm not going to cry a river like most Met fans are going to about Pete Alonso. I don't give a shit about the home run record. It means absolutely nothing to me. Too many Met fans got way too excited about that. For what reason? Ultimately, it doesn't get us a championship. It doesn't make us win more games. And it's ultimately another plaque, another trophy, personally, for Pete Alonso. I don't care about that. I really don't. And I'm not saying Pete Alonso only cares about his personal stats. I'm not saying that at all. I think he's a team guy. I think he wants to win. I'm never taking that against him. But he is part of the problem. We only talk about stats, but we don't talk about the reasoning of what this combined team does together. They're not very good. They're just not. You can't be nearly 20 games over 500 and tell me this is a good team. And then you want to run it back. Like, what big changes are you going to make? You know how impossible? It's nearly impossible for the Mets to trade Brandon Nimmo unless they take on a massive amount of money. Massive. That's not easy to do. It's not. For a broken down player who's barely an outfielder at this point, who's probably going to be a DH in 2 years, with many years to go in that contract, it's not going to be easy to trade that contract. Jeff McNeil is gone. We all know this. Pete Alonso's opting out. Sorry, Mets fans, but sometimes it is what it is. We lose with Pete Alonso, with him or without him. We've had more losing seasons with Pete Alonso than winning seasons. I'm not saying he's the problem, but you got to look at what is the way to change a team that is ultimately not going to cost Steve Cohen $150 million, $130 million to eat for one player just to trade him, to bring up a young kid or somebody, because it's probably going to be a young kid. I find it very hard to believe it's not going to be either Ryan Clifford or Carson Benj. And I think both of them are going to be part of this roster next year. I truly believe it. Now, again, if David Stern surprised the hell out of me and Steve Cohen and Pete Alonso is signed, and again, if you want to keep the same team, I don't think it's a good idea keeping this team together. I think it's a bad idea, because you're going to keep on losing and we're going to keep on saying the same thing over and over again. You're making your bed completely if you run it back with a lot of the same players. And I'm talking about mostly the guys in this lineup. You can't do it. No, changing guys like guys in center field. Let's get this guy, let's get that guy. Changing the outer core, the non-core guys of this team has not worked. Because that's what people said, right? Oh, bring in a guy to help Pete Alonso. Well, you bring, obviously you bring Lindor. Then you bring in Juan Soto. And it's still not enough. You're going to have 30 home run Lindor, a 40-plus home run Lindor. You're going to have a 40 home run in Pete Alonso, yet the Mets are on the verge. They're only 4 games over 500. And they're on the verge of not making the playoffs with 6 games to go. And I think I still believe that the pitching was the biggest problem. But again, where are you going with the pitching? Unless you're going to do something massive, there's not much change that can really go down. How are you getting rid of Manaea? He's got 2 years left with $25 million per. Who's taking him? Unless you're eating a massive part of the contract. Insurance is going to take care of the Montas contract, so you don't have to worry about that. David Peterson is on his final year and is in a contract year. Okay, he might survive because he's making chump change compared to some of the guys. You got 3 of these kids that, again, are still question marks until they're not. And don't think anybody can say that they're not question marks. Every one of them are. Now, I think Nolan McLean got a real shot to be a top pitcher on the New York Mets in baseball. But again, 10 starts aren't going to excite me to think that he's the next, Jacob deGrom. I'm just not doing that. And when you rely on rookie guys to be the end-all, be-all, is the same reason why the Mets are in this position this year. Because they counted on guys who have a career 4 ERA in Sean Manaea. They were hoping and relying on Kodai Senga, who is often injured and not very good. Question marks. I don't want to go into question marks for rotation at next season. I need a guarantee. I need a guarantee other than a Nolan McLean. I need somebody, because if Nolan McLean doesn't become the guy that we hope he can be, who are you counting on next year? What are they going to tell you? Sean Manaea? Kodai Senga? David Peterson? Yeah, that's a scary proposition for me. So another year older for Lindor, another year older for Brandon Nimmo, another year older in their prime years in Juan Soto. You're wasting again. This is the problem. People don't understand. People don't comprehend this. And this annoys the hell out of me. We are wasting years like Pete Alonso was given. You're wasting the best years of Brandon Nimmo, even though it's not the Brandon Nimmo I like to have on this team. But again, it's the best years you're having from Brandon Nimmo, RBIs and home runs wise. You're wasting a career year from Juan Soto. You're wasting a really good season yet again of Francisco Lindor. All these guys, they don't stay 26, 27 years old. They are getting older. They're only going to go downhill from here. They're not, Juan Soto could get better. Pete Alonso could have a lot of decent years still. I don't know if Brandon Nimmo is going to decline. Lindor might decline defensively because he just gets older, and offensively. How many more years do we have of this? People don't seem to comprehend that. People always talk about, well, we got these young kids, you got that young kids. Yeah, but nobody's playing shortstop for the foreseeable future. Nobody's playing right field for the foreseeable future. Those two positions, and go figure, half of your shortstops are now playing new positions because you signed Francisco Lindor. So instead of trading them to provide better players in those positions of need, you kept them around and threw them in different positions, which ultimately hasn't really worked out for the New York Mets very well, by the way. And then it leads to having 4 guys who play similar positions on a roster who can't get playing time every day. Because people want Acuna to play center field. People want to play Vientos. People want to play Beatty. People want to play Acuna. People want to play Mauricio. You can't do it all. This is the problem. The roster construction is bad. It's been bad from day one when you let Luis Angel Acuna make the team when he did not deserve it. 2024 should not matter. Because ultimately, he's been worse than what he was when he came up in September last year when Lindor got hurt. He has not adjusted at all. Luis Angel Acuna needs to be traded. Point blank. If you're going to keep Vientos here and Beatty here, you can have Vientos as your third baseman. You can have Beatty as your second baseman. And you got to trade some guys. It does not work. The biggest problem here is that you got too many guys playing the same positions. You got too many guys that are in your farm system that are going to be roadblocks yet again next year if you don't make decisions on these guys. The indecisiveness for David Stearns is why the Mets are here in the first place. The indecisiveness of not bringing up at least Nolan McLean in June is one of the reasons why the New York Mets are in this position on September 22nd out of the playoffs with 6 games to play. That is the problem. If you don't think that's the problem, you need to really sit down and contemplate what were you watching all season. That's a problem. That's a problem. There was no need for Nolan McLean, who was clearly developed more than anybody else in your farm system as a top pitching prospect. You could have brought him up to at least try to stabilize a rotation in dire need in June. When Kodai Senga went down, when you had an Achilles injury, with two of your rotation arms gone from injury, you could have brought him up. And yes, you could have left Brandon Sproat and Tong down, no problem. But ultimately, it was all about the rookie status and the extra draft pick. And that is why I don't trust David Stearns. He is worried too much about the future and not worrying about the present enough. I'm all on board about worrying about the future. But when you worry about the future more than the present of this team, I have a problem with you. Because you got over 3 million fans that listen to your owner to come to the ballpark and support this team. And I got to hear about draft picks and rookie status and bargain basement shopping in the rotation and signing 1-year deals to bullpen arms that are reclamation projects. And you're going to tell me to come to the ballpark and tell fans to show up, which they did, by the way, 3 million plus strong this year. And you put this fucking product on the field. That is your fault, Steve Cohen. That is your fault, David Stearns. You put this product together. All the additions for David Stearns this year have failed this organization and this team. Failed. We all know David Stearns didn't sign Juan Soto. We all know David Stearns didn't sign Pete Alonso. That was Steve Cohen. Last time I checked, Pete Alonso and Juan Soto has been probably the makeup of this team. Probably the best players on this team. And they performed like it this year. As much as I don't think Pete Alonso is the end-all be-all, he deserves credit this year. Along with Juan Soto. Montas, disaster. Manaea, disaster. You want to keep going? We can keep going all day. Siri, disaster. Right? Big disaster. Cedric Mullins, disaster. And it's all this year, by the way. Minter, disaster. You signed a guy who was already injured, coming back from injury. What do you thought was going to happen? You signed Clay Holmes, disaster. It's not about Clay Holmes and his performance. He's had a good season considering it's his first year starting since Pittsburgh many years ago. I'm not blaming Clay Holmes in this sense. I'm blaming the situation they put Clay Holmes in. Because what did you expect? If you had to have Manaea work out, you had to have Kodai Senga work out, you had to have Montes work out for Clay Holmes to work in this rotation. If one of those failed, you had to put more emphasis on Clay Holmes' start. You had to. But what happened? You had guys that you signed that can't go deep into games, which everybody should have known. You had to overuse your bullpen. Couple of guys that have reclamation projects, couple of guys injured that you got them on one-year deals because obviously guys who are not good and who coming off an injury are going to take one-year deals. Guys who are actually good in bullpens get multi-year deals. It's just that simple. So you were doomed, even though the Mets had the best pitching rotation in baseball in the first 2 months of the season. I talked about this, but people killed me for it. There was an underlying problem with what they were doing. Everybody talked about the ERA. Yes, we were winning, but it was 2 months into the season. Everybody was fresh. Everybody was coming off of spring training. Everybody was sitting down in the winter, relaxing. So all these guys were fresh. But even then, in April, you're not going to overuse your starters. You're going to take them out early. You're going to protect their innings early on. Understandable. But you can't do that in May and June and expect everything to be all fine and dandy. It just doesn't work. So you overused your bullpen in May and June way too much. You got guys hurt. Guys who probably never pitched that many innings in their life are doing that now, and they either got really bad or they got hurt. And now middle of June's come along, and now you have more injuries because guys who are constantly injured or guys who never pitched that many innings are now hurt. And now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. While you had pitching prospects, you had arms in your farm system to use in need. Draft picks and rookie status needs to go out the window. Even though you don't want to, you have to adjust. The problem with David Stearns, he does not adjust. He is focused on one thing and does not move from it. That's the problem. This is why we have the problem that we have. You have to adjust. You got to make that decision and say, you know what? I'd love to hold on to these rookie statuses of some of these pitchers. I'd love to have more draft picks. Of course you would. But when you see your team spiraling out of control and you have needs in your rotation and you have guys to fill those roles in the farm system, what the fuck are they there for? Because if they're not there to help the major league team in need, don't tell me this was your plan to bring them up in August like it was your plan all along, because it wasn't. You were desperate. Because the only way to save face and to save this season was to give all the pressure to these young kids that didn't deserve to be put in that spot at that moment. That is the problem. You thought because you were 20 plus games over 500 and you were in June that everything was going to be all fine and dandy. Oh, we got Minaya coming back. We got Montez coming back. Hey, we even got Kodai Senga coming back. When you relied on Nat to be your savior and to be your protection of looking like a fool, and you're going to tell me, because this is what's going to happen, that, oh, rookie status, draft picks, nobody should give a... If you're a fan and give a fuck about next year, you are the worst type of fan. And I say this many times, and I'm never going to waver from it. You are the worst type of fan. Because if there's fans after this, if this team don't make the playoffs, or they make a quick out in the playoffs, I don't want to hear one fan talk about, well, we can look forward to this. We can look forward to what? An offseason of a GM who is scared to spend, scared to trade prospects, and tell you that these prospects are what are going to make the future of this team. Yet you are afraid to make that decision in season when you need those guys and you have them in your farm system. There is the indecisiveness that I don't trust David Stearns, and he is the problem. You want to give him all the flowers and all the credit last year? Then you got to blame him this year. It goes hand in hand. When you were 45-24 through June 12th, and from June 13th until today, you were 35-52, it's more than just the players. They have a part in it for sure, and probably a major part in it. But don't think for a second that David Stearns couldn't help the team. He had farm system prospects that he could have used, and he didn't. And he had the trade deadline, and he failed on both of those spectrums. Both of those areas, he failed. And now we are living in his failure right now because you couldn't do your job properly, you were indecisive, and you're afraid of making the move. And if you're going to tell me bullshit in the offseason, in your press conference, after the season press conference, I don't want to hear your bullshit propaganda. I don't want to hear it. You failed in Milwaukee. You ultimately failed. Your job as a GM is to get your team, get the roster the way you want it so you can win a World Series. If that is not your end goal, you should not be in baseball. He failed in Milwaukee. Why? Because he made the playoffs the 95% of the time. That's success? How are they doing without David Stearns, by the way? They're still making the playoffs, so was it clearly him? Or was it just the organizational ideas? I'm sorry. I don't trust him. I don't trust him. And when it comes to starting pitching, as we get a little further into this stream, the Mets can do something in the offseason with starting pitching. If you don't think they can, they can. But will David Stearns do it? You can trade for a starting pitcher. They will be out there. We talked about Sandy Alcantara wasn't traded on. Oh, by the way, we'll get into that in a second. How has he been since the All-Star break? Because half the Met fans in this chat did not want him because of his quote-unquote stats. How those stats working out for Ryan Helsley? How those stats working out for guys like Gregory Soto? How are those stats? Because the good stats clearly are not working out for the New York Mets on this team. So I go through history and I see, hey, I know this guy is good. Yeah, he's having a rough start. But I've seen what he's done in the past. Why are we not looking at that? Why do we not care about that? The fact is, there is possibilities of making difference in this rotation. You can't rely on rookies to think it's all going to be okay. And then you're going to tell me that, oh, Shomanai is coming back? That's what I want? An injury-plagued gig, and I'm telling you right now, this guy's having surgery on his elbow. I'm not saying it's Tommy John, but it's going to be something that's going to keep him out for the majority of probably spring training, and we're going to be dealing with the same bullshit next year. And then you're going to give me Kodai Senga, who is always injured, and when he does get injured, it takes him a month and a half just to figure out everything, and he's pitching in the minor leagues. And oh, by the way, we face the Chicago Cubs, which is going to be interesting. We'll get into that series too. But the starting pitching can be changed. You need a top starter along with Nolan McLean. You need it. You need it. You can't tell me about the guys we currently have and tell me it's okay. It's not. It is not. You got to make a big trade for a starting pitcher, or you sign one. I know there ain't a lot of them out there in the free agent market. Then you probably have to trade for one. You know, I'm not a big fan of Framber Valdez, but he's available. I don't think that's going to be the route, but he's out there. He's better than everything you have. And don't think you don't. You do. You don't have better than Framber Valdez. So, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, and I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he's better than everything you have. And if you don't think so, you're not paying attention. There's trade opportunities to be had, and it needs to be done. If it's not, and we're going to roll with a rotation with these guys that we currently have, we're currently losing with these guys, right? They brought the young kids brought the energy for about a week, maybe two. After that, it's status quo for the New York Mets. And oh, by the way, how the Giants doing with Drew Gilbert? They're kind of out of it, right? So I guess we're not really worried about that, right? Drew Gilbert talk has kind of stopped all of a sudden. So, hey, interesting, right? There we go. All right, so this Nat series was exactly what it says on the bottom of your screen, the epitome of this season. They play up to their competition. They play extremely down. They don't even just play down. They play extremely down to their competition. The New York Mets had 5 errors in this 3-game series. 5. 5 goddamn errors in this series. We saw them throwing the ball all around all series. They just – and the Nationals – it's not like the Nationals played good. Let's make no mistake about it. They did not play well. They didn't. They gave every opportunity for the New York Mets to win a series. Even if it wasn't a sweep, they gave them every opportunity to win 2 out of 3. The errors they made, the base running mistakes. They made a couple of bad errors as well. Bad at-bats. Yeah, they made some big-ass defensive plays that kind of cost, kind of put a damper in our comebacks. But the comeback should have never been a story. You shouldn't be behind these teams. You need to be ahead of these teams. It's just, oh, man. And, Dolo, I was just going to talk about Cedric Mullins. Now, how much do we talk about, me and Chris, we talk about baseball 101, right? Throwing to bags. The Mets can't do that. Running the bases seems to be a problem all of a sudden. Like, I'm still not sure what Cedric Mullins is doing. If you're not sure, you hit the ball, right? You were in the batter's box hitting the ball. When you hit the ball, and the runner that's in front of you, wherever he is, you should be right around near him, or at least halfway near him, just in case that ball is dropped. You got to run. If you're indecisive, you always run. You're not the runner already on the base that, it's less than 2 outs. You got to make sure that you don't get doubled up. You are the hitter. You got to run when you're indecisive. There's no reason why he shouldn't have been on second, probably third. You can't stand there and be a fan and be a spectator and look at the ball. What are you doing? At the very least, if you want to be an idiot and be a spectator, stand on a bag. I don't care if you would have still been on first. That would have been bad within itself, but stay on a bag. You put yourself in a massive situation that you didn't have to be in. What the hell are you doing? Oh my God. I am cursing. They literally had 2 camera angles on the ball and Mullins, and I am screaming, run. It doesn't matter. You got to run. And at the very least, if you're confused, step on a bag so you don't get picked off. If you don't get caught on and you get tagged out. Like, what the hell are you? Oh my God. Like, The fundamentals of this team is so bad. And you know what? You want to blame the coaches, you want to blame the manager, and it probably will trickle down to that. But again, these are major leaguers. These are the best of the best in the world. And they can't play simple fundamentals that you learn in Little League, that you learn throughout every level of baseball throughout your life. Little leaguers know this. It's oh my God. It's like this team only had to play 500 baseball for a month. Shit, even the last 15 days, if they play 500 baseball, there is not a conversation about the third wild card. The Mets would be comfortably in the third wild card with 6 games to play. But they've been so bad because they don't pitch well. They have bad fundamentals. They're going to have 2 guys that are going to hit 40 home runs, and it ain't going to fucking matter. Like, oh, it's, oh, God. Why do we deal with this as fans, as Met fans? Why? Why do we do this to ourselves every year? It's the same conversations. And again, we can blame the coaches, we can blame the managers, or we can blame the GMs all we want. We really can. But over the last, 7 years, we've had Callaway, we've had Luis Rojas, we have Buck Showalter, and now we have Carlos Mendoza. We've had 4 managers in, a 6-7 year span, 6 year span. We've had 4 GMs, and it's the same outcome. It's the same problems, the same disasters, the same issues in the organizations. We even changed scouting directors. We even changed coordinators, fielding coordinators, hitting coordinators. Everything that you can possibly change throughout an organization, they've changed. We even changed owners over the last 7 seasons, 6-7 seasons. So new owner, new coaches, new GMs, new managers, yet we're talking about the same problems all the time. Go through the generation, it's been the same shit we talk about. And you know what? Met fans are dumb enough. And you know what? I love a lot of you guys, right? I've met a lot of people from this channel at stadiums, not just Citi Field, but all around the country. I mean, all the time I go to road games, I've seen people that watch the channel. I appreciate it. But man, we can, and I include myself in this. Don't think I don't. When I talk about Met fans and I say dumb and I say idiotic, I don't leave myself out. I promise you that. Right? Trust me, I'm not over my head. I'm one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. Anybody can tell you that met me. I am humble. I'm a nice person, but I am very passionate about my teams. And you know what? I'd have a beer. I don't care if you never agree with me on every issue of the New York Mets. I don't care. We can have a beer. If you don't drink, we can buy some food and talk baseball. Doesn't matter to me. But the Met fans, we are so dumb. And again, I include myself. I promise you that. I don't exclude myself from anything I say. When I say idiotic, moronic, dummies, trust me, I put myself in that situation as well. Because I say some dumb shit sometimes that even when I finish a stream and I'm like, did I actually say that? Trust me, I question myself a lot. And don't think, and this is not like being like, conceited or I like to listen to a stream, especially at work the next day when I do a stream. I'm like, damn, did I say that? Like, what was I thinking? But again, when you're in the moment, when you're live, you're not going to be perfect. I promise you that. So, man, Met fans continue to fall into these traps where whoever's running the team, make sure they're scapegoats at the end of the season so they can look like the guy who wasn't the problem. And I think David Stearns is that type of guy where, I don't think Carlos Mendoza is going to get fired. Now, again, if the Mets don't make the playoffs, there needs to be changes. Now, I don't think Carlos Mendoza deserves to be fired. I don't think that's fair. I think the same problem happened with Buck. I think when you have a season like 2022, and again, you choked, you did make the playoffs. Now, it wasn't the season we thought we were going to have, but you had a really good season. And then the following year, you kind of just spiraled out of control. You fired Buck after 2 seasons. You can't keep on firing managers and GMs, and you're just going to go through the same process. Everybody's got to evaluate new players. You're going to have a new manager. It's just, look, the same player, a lot of the same players have been here. The core guys have been here, and you lose through all the managers, through all the coaches, through all the GMs. You have a lot of the same players that have been here. If you think the coaches, the GMs, the managers are the problem, you're not paying attention. It comes down to the players. Just the players. And it's so unfortunate that the Nats series was just exactly what the whole season looked like. They don't do the fundamentals. They threw the ball around. They didn't get the big hits. The pitching was subpar. And by the way, guys, we had the pitching matchups we wanted. You had Brandon Sproat, you had Nolan McLean, and you had the tag team of Sean Manaea and Clay Holmes. And you know what? Sean Manaea wasn't great. Clay Holmes wasn't great. But also, they only gave up 3 runs. Like, that should have been fine. And you couldn't score. You couldn't win a game. This series was exactly why the Mets are in the situation they are in right now, with their destiny in somebody else's hands. You need help. And that is the worst possible spot to be in. I don't care if it's baseball, life expectancies, life jobs, doesn't matter. You want control over what you can do. If you want to move up in the world, move up in baseball, move up in sports, you want yourself to control that. You don't want anybody else to dictate what is going to happen to you. You just don't want that. You don't want nobody else telling you what to do with your life. Right? You don't want that. You want to dictate that. That is the Mets are in the worst possible spot possible. They got to take care of their own business, but ultimately it might not matter because now we have to scoreboard watch. Remember when I said the day we are out of a playoff spot officially is when this team, we can have this conversation about not making the playoffs because it's reality now. Because we don't control anything that happens except taking care of our own business. And that might not be enough. That is the worst possible spot you can be in. It's terrible. It's just terrible. And, you know, I'm glad somebody brought up the Jets with Saleh and new staff. And the same thing with the Giants, right? It's consistent that you keep on changing coaches and GMs, and there's no consistency. And the only thing I can say when it comes to David Stearns is that firing him probably won't fix the problems internally with this team because ultimately it's the core and the players that are the problem. I don't think firing David Stearns is going to change anything because all you're going to do is get new guys in that have different ways of doing things, and it's going to make more problems. It might fix it, but you can't keep on changing it. And I'd rather have, you know, could we actually have a manager here 3 years and a GM here 3 years together? Like that hasn't been a case for a while. That hasn't been a case in Sandy Alderson and Terry Collins. We got to stop making all these changes. So as much as I don't like David Stearns, I don't want to fire him to bring somebody else in who has different opinions. It's just going to start the process of transitioning all over again. I don't want that nonsense. That's the same reason why I don't want to fire Carlos Mendoza, because I still think that you can't keep on firing managers and GMs every 2 years. It's you're going to have a hard time being successful doing that. You just are. So we'll see. Yeah, Mario, and watch the Yankees lose because Aaron Judge without Juan Soto has not been very pretty in the postseason. But again, I think it's wide open in the playoffs. That's the other frustrating thing is that if the Mets find a way to get into the playoffs, the gloves are off because anybody can win the World Series. The Cincinnati Reds can make the playoffs and win the World Series. That might seem crazy to some people, but there is no really dominant team. Every team has flaws. Every team can be beaten. That is the beauty of what baseball has become. Now, I don't like the way it's become per se, but there's parity when you make the playoffs, and that's all you can ask for a fan, right? I don't want to be a third wild card team, be the last team in the playoffs with the worst record in the playoffs, and I feel like I have no shot. That's not the case anymore in baseball. So, am I confident the Mets are making the playoffs? God, no. I mean, I told you this weeks ago that just because they're in the playoffs doesn't mean I feel confident that they're going to make the playoffs. And even if they do, confident that they're going to go far. But the Mets have a better chance than everybody else that makes the playoffs or anybody who does, including the Reds, including the Diamondbacks. They do. And that's not me being confident about the New York Mets roster. It's not the case. It's just a fact. So, unfortunately, we're in a situation where we need help now. And this Nat series was just, it just couldn't happen. It really just could not happen. So again, the Mets don't control their own destiny. You see this, the wild card standings right in front of you. We only got 6 games to go. We know who we're playing. We're playing the Cubs for the next 3. And to finish the season, we got the good old-fashioned Miami Marlins. Oh, by the way, the Miami Marlins pushed back Sandy Alcantara to pitch against the Mets. Because if they would have kept him on rotation, he wouldn't have pitched against the Mets. He would have missed it. They are pushing back Sandy Alcantara to pitch against the Mets. And it's so fitting because who wanted Sandy Alcantara at the trade deadline? Me. And I told you it was going to bite us in the ass. I told you this. Go back to the trade deadline shows. What have I been saying? What did I say? Guys, you guys remember, you guys have been here all year. If some of you who's just been here this year, you've watched those shows. And if you haven't, trust me, go back. These are long shows, but trust me. I said it. Sandy Alcantara, you got to get him because either he's going to pitch against you and he's going to cause problems, or you have him on your team to help you try to win. Man, oh man. This is so perfect the way it's setting up in such a negative situation for the New York Mets. Because we all know now, and I just don't know. Like, we don't even know our rotation for this Cubs series yet. Have you guys even checked who are the pitching probables? We have no idea. David Peterson tomorrow. That's it. That's it. Because Mr. Kodai Senga, I think, is going to be pitching either in the final 2 games of the Cubs series or the first game or so of the Marlins series. You're setting up with the off day that guys can pitch on extra days rest, no, regardless, because the off day. So you're going to have everybody available that you need. Right now, if the rotation would – right now, I think Kodai Senga is going to pitch either game 2 or 3 of this Cubs series, and Jonah Tong's pitching in the series. Why they don't have Jonah Tong as an option is because I think Tong and Senga are aligned in the rotation together with their same amount of off days. So it depends on who you want to pitch in game 2, who you want to pitch in game 3. So it's going to be Tong and Senga. I find it hard to believe it's not. I think it's tomorrow. We're going to find out most likely. I checked it before we went live, but I'll check it again for you guys just to be sure, because it's TBD still. It's Boyd who's pitching for the Cubs and TBD for the Mets. And tomorrow, and the third game is also TBD. So again, when you're going down the stretch and you're fighting for a playoff spot and you still don't know who's pitching in these games, there's your problem, guys. The decisions or the lack thereof and the problems you have with your rotation all season comes down to the final 6 games of the season, and you have no idea what your rotation is setting up over the next 6 games or 5 games because you know about tomorrow. You have no idea who's pitching in game 2. You have no idea who's pitching in game 3 of this Cubs series. You have no idea, which you just assume. The way it's setting up is you're going to have McLean and Sproat pitching in the Marlins series. And probably Mahanaya, Clay Holmes. That is what it's setting up. Unfortunately for the Mets, that is fucking the worst case scenario you can have, because you cannot worry about setting up your rotation for the wild card. You might have a situation where David Peterson will be pitching game 1 because that's just the way it lines up, or a Jonathan. Like, that is how it's setting up. Now, you'll have McLean and Sproat for the second. You'll have one of those guys for game 2 of a postseason series. And game 3, who knows? So the Mets put themselves in a situation where they don't know their rotation because it's been a shit show for all year. They're controlling their own destiny is out the window. They need help now, along with winning. And this team has no idea. Every day when you go into a game, you have no idea what type of team what type of performance you're going to get. You can get the performance you had in this Nat series, or you can have a performance like they had against the Padres series. That is Jekyll and Hyde. That is so much on the both sides of the spectrum, and so bad and good. A good fundamental series and a bad fundamental series. You see the outcome. When the Mets play fundamentally sound baseball, they win. And it hasn't been happening enough this season. And it's a big reason why they're in the spot. They are in 4 games over 500, technically out of the playoffs, as the Reds have the tiebreaker. And oh, by the way, that team right behind them in the Arizona Diamondbacks have the tiebreaker as well, because they have the better division record in their respective division over the Mets. So the Mets can't even get that. They're in trouble. They need to pray to any God. If you don't pray to any God, they need to do something. Change your sneakers. Change your bats. Change your jockstrap. I don't know. But they got to find something to find their way into the playoffs. And again, they can go 6-0 and still not make it. That's the problem. That is the problem they put them in, man. And it's so frustrating. I'm so freaking done with this team. And yes, I am going to watch because I'm an idiot. I like torture. I like torture just like you guys like torture. Again, the Cubs series, the Cubs are not really playing for anything. They're 3 games ahead of the Padres for the first wild card. So they kind of have something to play for, because yes, the Padres can get hot and the Cubs can lose a couple, and they can lose that first wild card and kind of, not have home field advantage in the wild card series. But they were playing something against the Reds and they got swept in 4 games against the Reds. They're pissed, which is just perfect for the New York Mets. The Cubs are pissed. They lost to their division team, and they're still playing for something, which is the first wild card, and they got swept by the Reds. So they're going to be pissed. You got guys like Pete Crow Armstrong, who wants to just cause damage to us. You got Imanaga, you got Boyd pitching in this series, so it's not easy going against a really good pitching staff, because the Reds, in that Cincinnati ballpark, the ball was flying out, so nobody really were pitching well, even though they had shutouts and, 1-1-0 twice in that series. But the Mets have David Peterson going in game 1. I couldn't even tell you what we're going to get from David Peterson. He's been bad. I have no idea. Maybe he'll step up. I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea, guys. I am so lost for words when it comes to this Cubs series. I wish it's so bad right now. We don't even know who's starting in game 2 and 3 in this series. That is how bad it's been for the New York Mets. The Mets probably right now are trying to decide who's pitching game 2 and game 3. I really believe Jonathan is pitching one of these 2 games, either game 2 or 3, because he lines up for one of those games. And they got to know what to do with Kodai Senga. They still didn't make a decision. He pitched on Thursday. It's Monday. Where is the decision? This is, again, the indecisiveness I cannot Stan, why hasn't a decision been made after the start in the minors for Kodai Senga? It wasn't a good start. He had a really good start for the first one and a bad start in the second one. Where is the decision? Why wasn't this determined on Friday after you found out that he feels good? Because you cannot, as much as I don't like Kodai Senga, you cannot, as an organization, tell me in the beginning of the year that Kodai Senga is your co-ace and one of your best starters, and this guy is not going to pitch one more time in dire need, the season on the line, and he's not going to pitch, and you're going to tell me that you want this guy to be a top starter next year, and you told me in the beginning of the year that he's your ace or one of your aces? No. I don't care if we go down with the ship. Kodai Senga needs to pitch. I don't care if he gives up 10 runs. This guy needs to pitch. You told me all season this is one of your guys. You didn't make trades. You didn't sign guys because of Kodai Senga. And you're not going to pitch him? I don't give a shit how bad he was in his last start. You got to throw him on the mound. Because I don't want to hear at the end of the season that, oh, well, we didn't have the best Kodai Senga. Well, I don't give a shit. You made your bed, David Stearns. Put Kodai Senga in one of these games against the Cubs. Deal with it. Go down with the ship fully. Because I don't want to hear excuses where, oh, well, Kodai Senga wasn't. No, I don't care. I don't care if his body's not moving in the same direction like he said prior to going down. I don't give a shit. Get out there and pitch. Your team needs you. Show the fuck up. And this goes for every goddamn player on this team. There is no excuses. Show up. The team needs you. You pitch. You got to be on the mound. They told us that you are the top 2 pitchers in our rotation. That's what we heard at the beginning of the year. That's what we heard in the offseason. That's why we didn't sign top pitchers. That is why we didn't go and get a top pitcher at the trade deadline, regardless of price. Because they told me that you were the guy with Sean Manaea. At the very least, Sean Manaea is out there. He's not pitching well, but at least he's going out there and trying to give his all. You know, I am not very happy with Sean Manaea. I did not want him back, but at least he's out there trying to give it. I know Sean Manaea cares. I can't tell you for a fact that Kodai Senga gives a shit because he constantly fails this team. Last year, when we thought he was going to come back in September, pitch a few starts prior to the playoffs, when the team needed every win, Kodai Senga was not there for the New York Mets last year. And then you decide to throw his ass in the playoffs? Shame on you. Kodai Senga better start in one of these next 6 games. I'm telling you that right now. Because I don't want this fucking guy on the team next year. Get him off this team. He is not there when you need him. And he's going to dictate when he's going to pitch, when you need starting pitching. You can't tell me your rotation is okay when you have no idea who's pitching in game 2 or 3 of the Cubs series with 6 games to go. What are we doing here? Where is the decisiveness? David, I don't want to hear about confidence. There is no confidence with this team. David, you could have confidence in this team. Go right ahead. You'll be the only one. And you know what? If they make the playoffs, I'll give you a little bit of credit for having that confidence. But that doesn't mean I'm going to have confidence going into the playoffs. Senga is, again, David, I agree. He's a prima donna. That's what he is. This guy needs to pitch. If the Mets go to him and he says, well, I don't feel right, I don't give a shit. We pay you. Get out on the mound and pitch. I'm very frustrated in Sean Manaea. I did not want him here, but he's going out there every 5th day or 6th day, and he's gave it his all. I know Sean Manaea actually cares because I seen him on the mound put his head down in despair because he's so frustrated that he can't help this team the way he wants to. I know he cares. I can't say the same thing for Kodai Senga. I really can't. And you know what? Step up. Kodai Senga, get out there and help your team. I'm not sure if you're going to pitch well, but you know what? You're considered one of our best pitchers. according to others, not me. Go out there and do it. Please, just go out there. Maybe you'll surprise us and pitch well. I just don't know. Guys, it's been a huge roller coaster for us as Met fans. The last week of the season, 6 games ago, the Mets are officially out of a playoff spot because of a tiebreaker. They don't control their own destiny. They just don't. Congratulations to the New York Mets for providing us with that stressful season that we always seem to have. Even if they win all 6 games, it doesn't guarantee them a playoff spot because the Reds have the tiebreaker, the Diamondbacks have the tiebreaker. No matter what the Mets do, they need help over these last 6 games. The Cincinnati Reds play the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Milwaukee Brewers. By the time the Reds play the Milwaukee Brewers, the Brewers might have concluded they're the best record in the national or in baseball or in the National League and have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So those games might mean nothing. They might not even pitch any of their best guys. They might sit a lot of their guys. So it might be pitcher perfect for the Cincinnati Reds going into that Brewers series. Because the Brewers can set up, they have off day, they'll probably have the bye. So they could pitch their best guys if they want and play their best guys, but they're not going to risk injury. So I wouldn't be surprised if guys come out after the 3rd inning just to get their pitches in, or guys play a couple of innings and get them out position player-wise. The Mets are in a bad situation. They're playing a Cubs team that is still trying to hold off the Padres for the first wild card, and that's what they're playing for. So, and they just got swept by the Cincinnati Reds in their division. They're pissed. Not a great situation for the New York Mets. And we all know, right? The Mets might find a way to win 2 out of 3 against the Cubs. And would anybody be shocked if the Mets win 2 out of 3? Because we all know what's going to come down to. It's going to come down to the Marlins and Sandy Alcantara. And that is not where I have the most confidence in this team. So the last week of the season, guys, tune into the pre-games. I'm going to do my very, very best for the final 6 games of the year to do pre-games and post-games because this might be the last of it, guys. Definitely for the season. Who knows about the postseason? But I'll have you covered for pregame and postgame. It is what it is. No sleep is no sleep. This is what I care about. This is what I love. This is what you guys love. Pregame, postgame for every game for the rest of the season, guys. So tune in to the postgame show, to the pregame show, everything we got to tune into for the remainder of the season. Hopefully we get some help and the Mets win some ball games because right now they don't have a choice. There's no more excuses. They got to win ball games, and they need some help from other teams facing the Cincinnati Reds. With that said, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you tomorrow. Mets Cubs. 6 games left, guys. Let's go, Mets, guys. We will be here together, win or lose, for the rest of the season, guys. Have a great night. Let's go, Mets. Enjoy the rest of your night, guys. Your off day. And tomorrow, we do it all over again, guys. Have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets.
Put Bob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic.